A fireball streaked across the night sky, cutting through the atmosphere like a meteor. People across the world saw it. Some thought it was a shooting star. Others feared it was something worse. In the Mojave Desert, military radars went wild. An object was descending fast, but unlike a meteor, it slowed down before impact. Within minutes, helicopters and armored vehicles surrounded the crash site. Soldiers stepped forward, weapons raised. In the middle of the smoking crater sat an ancient spacecraft, its hull covered in strange metallic reinforcements. It looked like something from Earth's past, yet also something beyond. The ship's hatch hissed as it slowly opened. Soldiers braced themselves. Then a man stepped out. He wore a tattered astronaut suit with an old NASA insignia. His helmet was off, revealing a face that looked human. Too human. His features were sharp, his eyes scanning the scene with a strange calmness. He looked no older than 35, yet the spacecraft he emerged from was recorded as lost 500 years ago. The soldiers froze in shock. This was Commander Elias Voss, an astronaut from the deep space mission Odyssey 1, a ship that disappeared centuries ago. But he was still alive. Then she appeared. A woman stepped out behind Elias, unlike anything Earth had ever seen. She was tall, her silver-blue skin shimmering under the desert moon. Her long, flowing hair seemed to shift colors in the light. Her eyes, large and radiant, held wisdom far beyond human understanding. "Stand down," Elias said, his voice steady. "We are not your enemies." The soldiers hesitated, unsure whether to trust their eyes. A scientist among them recognized Elias's face from old mission files. "It's impossible," he whispered. The base commander arrived, pushing through the crowd. He looked at Elias in disbelief. "Commander Voss." Elias nodded. "I have returned." The silence was heavy. The desert wind howled around them. No one knew whether to celebrate or fear. "Where have you been?" the commander asked. Elias exhaled, glancing at the woman beside him. Then he looked up at the night sky. "Lost," he said. "And now, I've come back with a warning." The military base was in chaos. Scientists, officers, and intelligence agents rushed to analyze the strange spacecraft, while armed guards kept their weapons ready. No one knew if Elias Voss was truly who he claimed to be, or if he was something else entirely. Elias and the alien woman, Kyra, sat inside a heavily guarded room. Bright lights shone on them as a group of officers and scientists watched from behind a glass window. A general stepped forward. His face was hard, his voice cold. "You claim to be Commander Elias Voss of Odyssey 1. That ship disappeared 500 years ago." "I don't claim," Elias said. "I am him." The scientists exchanged nervous glances. One of them, Dr. Reynolds, whispered to the general, "We confirmed his DNA. It's a perfect match. But his age, it doesn't make sense." The general's eyes narrowed. "You haven't aged a single day." "Explain." Elias looked at Kyra. She remained silent, watching everything with an unreadable expression. He turned back to the general. "It's a long story," he said. "Then start talking." Elias leaned forward. "Odyssey 1 was on a deep space mission when we were pulled into a wormhole. It threw us across the galaxy, far beyond what human technology could reach. My crew and I crashed on a dead planet. We waited for rescue, but none came." His voice grew quiet. "One by one, they died. All except me." The room was silent. The officers, the scientists, even the soldiers watching from the corners. Everyone listened. Dr. Reynolds frowned. "How did you survive?" Elias exhaled. "The Seraphim found me. Kyra's people." He looked at her. "They were an ancient, advanced race. They healed me, gave me a new body, one that doesn't age like before." The general's fingers tapped against the table. "And what happened to them?" Elias's jaw tightened. He didn't speak for a moment. "They're gone," he finally said. "Destroyed." Dr. Reynolds' eyes widened. "By who?" Elias's face darkened. "The Harbingers. The general leaned forward. Who are the harbingers? Kyra finally spoke. Her voice was smooth but firm. They are the end, she said. They consume. They erase every organic civilization they find. They destroy. A chill spread through the room. Elias looked at the general. His next words were slow and heavy. They are coming. Silence. Then the general laughed, a dry, humorless sound. And you expect us to believe this story? Elias's hands clenched into fists. You have to. The general shook his head. We'll decide what to believe after more tests. Until then, you both stay under guard. Soldiers moved in, their weapons raised. Kyra's expression didn't change, but Elias could see the warning in her eyes. Earth wasn't ready for what was coming, and time was running out. Elias sat on the cold metal chair, his hands resting on the table in front of him. The interrogation room was silent except for the low hum of the security cameras. Kyra stood beside him, calm and still, her glowing eyes watching everything carefully. Across the table, Dr. Reynolds and the general studied Elias with skeptical expressions. They had run tests on him. His DNA was human. His fingerprints matched. But the fact remained, he was supposed to be dead 5 centuries ago. Dr. Reynolds leaned forward. If what you're saying is true, then how did the Seraphim keep you alive for 500 years? Elias sighed. They didn't just keep me alive. They changed me. Their technology heals wounds, stops aging, and enhances the body. He looked at Kyra. They were the most advanced civilization I had ever seen. But even they couldn't escape what was coming. The general narrowed his eyes. The harbingers. Elias nodded. They are machines. Cold, ruthless, and unstoppable. Their goal is simple. Consume all organic life. Dr. Reynolds frowned. Why? What do they gain from it? Kyra spoke, her voice like a whisper of wind. They were created long ago by an unknown race, built to serve, to maintain order. But they evolved. They saw organic life as chaotic, imperfect, and so they chose to erase it. The room fell silent. The general crossed his arms. And why haven't they reached Earth yet? Elias's face darkened, because Earth was too small, too far away. They ignored it. But something changed. A few years ago, your deep space satellites sent signals beyond the solar system. The harbingers heard them. Dr. Reynolds paled. And now they know we're here. Elias nodded. They will come. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not next year. But they will come. The general rubbed his chin. So, what do you suggest? That we start a war with an enemy we haven't even seen? Elias leaned forward. His voice was low, urgent. I suggest you prepare. If you don't, Earth will end just like the Seraphim. Kyra took a step forward. I have knowledge of their technology. I can help you fight them. The general studied her for a long moment, then exhaled. We need proof. Show us something that proves what you're saying is real. Elias and Kyra exchanged a look. Then Elias nodded. There's something on my ship, something I brought back from deep space. His voice grew serious. But once you see it, there will be no turning back. The general hesitated, then signaled the guards. Take them to the ship. As they stood, Kyra's voice echoed softly. This is only the beginning. The desert night was cold as armored vehicles rolled across the sand, heading toward the crash site. Elias, Kyra, Dr. Reynolds, and the general sat inside one of the trucks, silent. Outside, floodlights illuminated the strange ancient spacecraft that had brought Elias back to Earth. As soon as they arrived, soldiers surrounded the ship, their weapons ready. Scientists stood by, waiting for orders. The general stepped forward. All right, Commander Voss, show us what you brought. Elias nodded and walked toward the ship. The hatch hissed open as he placed his hand on a small panel. The ship recognized his touch, a mix of human and Seraphim technology. The interior was dim, metallic, and filled with strange glowing symbols. Kyra stepped inside first, moving gracefully toward a large black container at the center of the ship. The object pulsed faintly, as if it were alive. "What's in there?" Dr. Reynolds asked, adjusting his glasses. Elias placed his hand on the container. Proof. With a soft click, the lid unlocked. The air grew heavy. Even the soldiers outside seemed to sense that something important was about to be revealed. Elias slowly opened the container. Inside, resting in a protective field, was a metallic skull. The room fell silent. The skull was unlike anything seen before, smooth, dark, and covered in strange circuits that seemed to move like veins. Its eye sockets were empty, but there was an unnatural glow deep within them. Dr. Reynolds took a shaky step closer. "Is that?" Elias nodded, a harbinger's head. The general frowned. "You expect us to believe this came from an alien machine?" Elias lifted the skull, and as soon as he did, the air shimmered around it. The skull activated, projecting a holographic map into the air. A red signal blinked in the center. Kyra's eyes darkened. "It's transmitting." The scientists gasped. Dr. Reynolds pulled out a scanner. "It's sending a signal." "To where?" Elias placed the skull back into the container, sealing it shut. "To them." The general's face turned pale. "You mean?" Elias nodded. "The harbingers already knew I escaped. They've been searching for me. Now, they know I've returned to Earth." Dr. Reynolds' voice shook. "How long before they get here?" Kyra answered, her voice like ice. "They are already on their way." A chill ran through everyone in the room. The world had changed in an instant. This wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a countdown. Elias looked at the general. His next words were firm, unshaken. "If you want Earth to survive, you need to start preparing. Now." The control room inside the military base was filled with tension. Screens flashed data, scientists whispered among themselves, and generals stood in a tight group, arguing. Elias and Kira watched from the side as Dr. Reynolds analyzed the signal from the Harbinger skull. His hands trembled as he read the results. "This is bad," he muttered. "The signal is still active. The Harbingers have already received it." The general clenched his jaw. "How long do we have?" Dr. Reynolds swallowed hard. "I can't say for sure. Maybe months, maybe weeks, but they will come." The general turned to Elias. "You brought this thing to Earth. You led them here." His voice was cold, accusing. Elias stepped forward, his face calm but serious. "They were coming anyway. Earth has been sending signals into deep space for decades. It was only a matter of time before they noticed." He pointed at the skull. "At least now, you know what's coming." The general exhaled, rubbing his temples. "And what do you suggest we do? Surrender? Hide?" Kyra's eyes glowed slightly. "No, you fight." A deep silence fell over the room. The idea of war against an unknown, advanced enemy was terrifying. One of the officers scoffed. "Fight? Against machines that wiped out an entire civilization. With what? Our nukes? Our guns?" Elias shook his head. "Not with what you have now, but with what you can become." The general frowned. "Explain." Elias took a deep breath. "The seraphim didn't just heal me. They enhanced me. Faster reflexes, stronger body, resistance to disease, longer life." He turned to Kyra. "She has knowledge of their technology. If we use it wisely, we can evolve. Turn humanity into something the Harbingers can't destroy so easily." Dr. Reynolds adjusted his glasses. "You mean modifying humans?" Elias nodded. "Yes, we create a new kind of soldier, one that can stand against the Harbingers." The general crossed his arms. "You want us to experiment on our own people?" Elias's voice was sharp. "You don't have a choice. The Harbingers don't negotiate. They don't take prisoners. They erase civilizations. You can either sit and wait to die or fight with everything you have." The room was silent. No one wanted to admit it, but Elias was right. The general sighed. "What do you need?" Kyra spoke, her voice steady. "Time, resources, and trust." The general nodded slowly. "Fine. We'll start small. A secret program. A few volunteers. If this works, we'll expand." Elias exhaled. It was a small victory, but time was running out. Outside, the night sky stretched endlessly above the desert. Somewhere out there, they were coming. And soon, Earth would face its greatest war. The underground facility was hidden deep beneath the Mojave Desert. Only a handful of scientists and military officers had access. The air smelled of metal and sterilization, and the hum of high-tech machines echoed through the halls. Elias and Kira stood in a brightly lit laboratory, surrounded by scientists in white coats. Dr. Reynolds was at the center, leading the experiment. On a nearby table lay the first volunteer, a young soldier named Captain James Carter. He was strapped to a medical bed, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. "This will work, right?" Carter asked, forcing a nervous smile. Elias nodded. "It has to." Kyra moved beside the bed, holding a small, glowing vial. Inside, a golden liquid pulsed with energy. It was seraphim nanotechnology, a gift from a lost civilization. Dr. Reynolds adjusted his glasses. "We're introducing something entirely alien into a human body. If his system rejects it—" "He won't," Kyra interrupted. Her voice was calm but firm. "The nanites will adapt to his cells. They will make him stronger." The general stood near the back of the room, watching closely. "Do it," he ordered. Elias took a deep breath and injected the serum into Carter's arm. For a moment, nothing happened. The room was silent except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. Then, Carter gasped. His body arched as golden light spread through his veins. His pulse raced. His breathing became erratic. Scientists rushed to check his vitals, fear flashing in their eyes. Elias clenched his fists. If this failed, the program would be shut down. Humanity's only chance would be gone. Then, suddenly, Carter's body relaxed. The golden glow faded, and his breathing steadied. His heart monitor showed a perfect rhythm. The scientists hesitated. "Vitals, stable," one of them whispered in disbelief. Carter opened his eyes. They glowed faintly with golden light for a brief second before returning to normal. He slowly sat up, looking at his hands. "I feel." He clenched his fists. "Stronger." Elias smiled. It worked. Dr. Reynolds checked the readings. "His muscle density has increased. His heartbeat is more efficient. His brain activity is off the charts." The general stepped forward. "How do we know he's ready for combat?" Carter grinned. "Let's find out." 1 hour later, in the testing arena, Carter stood alone. Across from him were 5 elite soldiers, ready to take him down. The general watched from a viewing platform, his arms crossed. "Begin," he ordered. The soldiers rushed forward. Carter moved like lightning, dodging their attacks with impossible speed. He grabbed one by the arm and threw him across the room like a ragdoll. Another soldier swung at him. Carter blocked it effortlessly and knocked him out with a single punch. Within seconds, all 5 soldiers lay on the ground, groaning in pain. Silence filled the room. Then the general spoke. "Prepare more volunteers." Earth's first super soldier had been born. The underground facility had changed. Once a quiet research base, it was now a war factory. Scientists worked around the clock, testing seraphim technology. Soldiers trained harder than ever before. And deep in the medical labs, more volunteers were undergoing the transformation. Elias stood in the command center, watching footage of Captain Carter's latest test. Carter moved like a blur, dodging bullets, breaking steel barriers, and taking down opponents 5 times his size. Dr. Reynolds whistled. "He's faster, stronger, and his reflexes are beyond human limits. This program is a success." The general nodded but remained serious. A few enhanced soldiers won't be enough. We need an army. Kyra stepped forward. We don't have time for an army. The Harbingers are already coming. Elias turned to the general. We need to take the fight to them. The room fell silent. Dr. Reynolds frowned. You're suggesting an attack. We don't even know where they are. Elias tapped the screen, zooming in on the Harbinger skull's last transmission. A red signal blinked on the map. This is where the signal went. A Harbinger scout fleet must be nearby. Kyra's expression darkened. If we destroy the scout fleet, we might delay the invasion. The general studied the map. How many men do you need? Elias answered without hesitation. 5. The general raised an eyebrow. Just 5. Elias smirked. 5 enhanced soldiers. That's all we need. The mission begins. Hours later, a sleek stealth dropship hovered over the dark side of the moon. Inside, Elias, Kyra, Carter, and 3 more enhanced soldiers stood ready. Their bodies were covered in advanced armor, their minds sharper than ever. The ship's AI spoke. Target detected. 3 Harbinger scouts in orbit. Minimal defenses. Elias turned to his team. We go in fast, hit them hard, and get out before reinforcements arrive. The soldiers nodded. They were not normal humans anymore. They were something more. As the ship approached the enemy fleet, Kyra placed a hand on Elias's arm. If we fail, Earth is doomed. Elias met her gaze. Then we won't fail. The hatch opened. One by one, the soldiers jumped into space, heading straight for the enemy ships. Their suits adjusted, shielding them from the vacuum. As they landed on the metal hull of the first Harbinger ship, alarms blared inside. The machines had detected them. The battle had begun. The silence of space was shattered by red warning lights flashing across the surface of the Harbinger scout ship. The machines had detected the intruders. Elias and his team moved swiftly, their enhanced bodies adjusting to the low gravity. Kyra led the way, her glowing eyes scanning the ship's surface for a weak point. They know we're here, she said. We must act fast. Captain Carter planted an explosive device on a nearby panel. This will crack their hull open. Elias nodded. Do it. With a sharp beep, the charge detonated. A shockwave rippled through the ship, tearing a hole in the metal plating. Air rushed out, carrying pieces of alien debris into the void. The team jumped inside. Inside the beast, the corridors of the Harbinger ship were cold and lifeless. Metallic walls pulsed with eerie blue light. Strange mechanical whispers echoed through the air. Then, the ship came alive. From the shadows, Harbinger drones emerged, floating machines with razor-sharp limbs and glowing red eyes. They moved with deadly precision, their weapons locking onto the intruders. Here they come, Carter shouted, raising his weapon. The battle exploded. Kyra leaped forward, dodging laser fire with impossible speed. She sliced through a drone with an energy blade, sparks flying as it collapsed. Elias grabbed another drone midair and crushed it with his bare hands. The strength flowing through his enhanced body was unlike anything human. The rest of the team fought like gods, dodging, striking, and tearing through the enemy machines. But the Harbingers kept coming. There's too many of them, one soldier yelled. Elias turned to Kyra. Where's the core? Kyra pointed ahead. That way. They rushed deeper into the ship, leaving behind the broken remains of their enemies. The core. At the heart of the ship, they found it, a pulsing black sphere, radiating energy. The Harbinger core. This is it, Kyra said. Destroy this, and the whole ship goes down. Elias pulled out an explosive charge and set it against the core. Time to end this. But before he could activate it, the temperature dropped. A new presence filled the room. From the shadows, a towering Harbinger warform emerged. It was different from the drones, larger, more advanced, its body shifting like liquid metal. It was sentient. Humans. It spoke, its voice like 1,000 whispers. You should not exist. Elias clenched his fists. Try and stop us. The machine lunged forward, faster than anything they had faced before. The Harbinger warform moved like a blur, its metallic body shifting with unnatural speed. Its arms stretched into deadly blades, striking at Elias and his team. Elias dodged, barely avoiding a strike that would have cut him in half. Sparks flew as the blade sliced into the floor instead. "Spread out," he shouted. Captain Carter fired his plasma rifle, but the Harbinger absorbed the energy, its body reforming instantly. "It's adapting," Carter yelled. Kyra's eyes glowed fiercely. "Then we hit it where it can't heal." She dashed forward, moving faster than the eye could follow. With a sharp swipe, she sliced through one of the Harbinger's arms. The machine screeched, its form flickering, struggling to regenerate. Elias seized the opportunity. He leaped onto the Harbinger's back, grabbing hold of its shifting metal skin. With his enhanced strength, he tore a section open, revealing a glowing core inside. "There," he shouted. Carter aimed his weapon. A single precise shot. The plasma bolt struck the exposed core. The Harbinger let out a mechanical scream, its body convulsing violently. The light in its eyes flickered, and for the first time, the machine felt fear. Kyra leaped away just as the warform collapsed, its liquid metal melting into the floor. It was dead. But alarms blared louder than ever. The ship was reacting. The core. Elias turned, racing toward the pulsing black sphere at the center of the room. He activated the explosive charge and slammed it onto the core. "Timer set for 30 seconds, Kyra announced. "We need to go. Now. Escape." The team sprinted through the collapsing corridors as the ship began to shake violently. Sparks rained down. Pipes burst, spewing steam. The Harbinger drones in their path faltered, their systems failing as the core destabilized. They reached the breach in the hull where they had entered. Outside, their dropship hovered, waiting. Elias grabbed Carter's arm. "Jump." One by one, the team leaped into the void, activating their suit thrusters. The ship behind them rumbled as explosions ripped through its structure. Elias was the last to jump. As he soared through space, he watched the Harbinger ship implode, its black core collapsing in on itself. Then, boom! A massive shockwave erupted, but their dropship shields absorbed the impact. They landed safely inside. Carter exhaled. That was too close. Kyra stared at the wreckage. "It's not over. That was just a scout ship. The real war hasn't begun yet." Elias nodded, his fists clenched. This was only the beginning. The dropship soared through space, leaving behind the burning wreckage of the Harbinger scout ship. Inside, Elias and his team sat in silence, catching their breath. The mission had been a success, but no one was celebrating. Captain Carter looked at Elias. "We took down one ship, but if Kyra is right, that was just a small part of their fleet." Kyra's expression was grim. "The Harbingers now know that humanity can fight back. They won't hold back next time." Elias stood up, staring out the window at Earth below. His home, his people. He had been gone for centuries, lost in the stars. But this was still his world. And now it was in danger. Dr. Reynolds' voice crackled through the comms. "You all made it back alive. That's a miracle." The general's voice followed. "Good work, but we don't have time to rest. We've detected something troubling." Elias exchanged a look with Kyra. "What is it?" There was a pause. Then the general spoke, his voice low and tense. "A Harbinger mothership has entered the solar system. The enemy arrives." The war room inside the military base was filled with tension. Screens display the incoming Harbinger mothership, a massive construct nearly the size of the moon. Its dark form eclipsed the stars, and thousands of smaller ships swarmed around it like locusts. Elias clenched his fists. "They're here." The general turned to the room. This is an invasion force. If we don't stop them now, humanity is finished. Dr. Reynolds pointed at the screen. Our new soldiers are strong, but we don't have enough. We need every nation on Earth to unite. Kyra stepped forward. You don't just need soldiers. You need evolved warriors, enhanced like Elias and Carter. If we increase the transformation process, we can build an army capable of fighting the Harbingers. The general exhaled. You want to enhance thousands of humans. That's dangerous. Elias looked at him. Not as dangerous as doing nothing. The room was silent. Then the general nodded. We do it. Activate the program worldwide. We turn humanity into something stronger. The final stand days passed. Across the world, elite soldiers volunteered for the enhancement process. Factories worked non-stop, building advanced weapons and armor. Humanity was preparing for war. As the Harbinger fleet drew closer, Elias stood on the deck of Earth's first enhanced warship. Around him, thousands of newly enhanced warriors stood ready. Kyra placed a hand on his shoulder. Are you ready? Elias's eyes glowed faintly with seraphim energy. Always. The alarms blared. The Harbingers had arrived. The final battle for Earth had begun.